Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Sam Stoutland here, and welcome to the show about Pokemon TCG stuff mix up. And today we have another rogue deck for today. This is Stoutland, Ghetsis. Of course, Stoutland's and Boundaries Crossed now. Just got Ghetsis, so yeah, new combo right there. This video is a week late because I really didn't test it whatsoever in that first couple weeks, because I was testing for Battle Roads and I didn't really have time to test some Stoutland Ghetsis, but now I've played it and I can tell you my thoughts on it right now.
Back when Boundaries Crossed came out, Stoutland caught my eye as a half-decent card. It caught my attention so much that I did a mix-up video on it. You can check that video out here. Long story short, the deck didn't do so hot. Now, with our newest set, Plasma Freeze, we gain a card that gives Stoutland a huge boost, that card being Ghetsis. For those of you who were too lazy to click on my last video on Stoutland, or just don't know what it does, Stoutland's ability, Sentinel, prevents your opponent from playing supporters if Stoutland is active. And you should all know what Ghetsis does by now, but I'll explain it anyway. Ghetsis is a supporter that lets you look at your opponent's hand and shuffle any item cards you find there back into their deck, then draw that many cards. The biggest problem with Stoutland before was that your opponent could just play a Pokemon catcher and then be able to play supporters again. That and its attack is terrible, but let's focus on stuff we can actually fix. Playing Ghetsis will shuffle any catchers they have back into their deck, and it will become much harder for them to draw into more catchers because they can't play supporters, so they're relying on their top deck. To start off, let's look at a skeleton list, because there are a lot of different things that pair well with Stoutland, and it's best to explain the basic skeleton now. The Lillipup you pick is actually a bit important. There are two of them that are both decent. One has Collect, and one has Pickup, which lets you get an item back from your discard pile. I chose all Pickup Lillipups, since it seems like a much better attack in the long run. It can get back your Ace Spec, and if you run Random Receiver, it can get you a supporter. The Calderex and Floatstone is to make sure you can get Stoutland back into the active if something else on your bench gets catchered. The Tool Scrapper is good against Garbodor, but it can also work against Floatstones. Either from a Keldeo or whatever else, getting rid of those things help you stall much easier. Only 3 Ghetsis because it's a terrible draw supporter, and you really only need 1 or 2 Ghetsis to disrupt your opponent. With a lot of colorless attackers, a Spursha City Gym is an obvious inclusion. The 7 Energy can be changed to fit whatever other attackers or support Pokemon you decide to include. Now that we have the basic skeleton list, we need some muscle for it. The first idea I had was Magnezone. Ghetsis isn't that great a draw supporter, so Magnezone lets you use a good draw supporter like Juniper, and then play Ghetsis to disrupt your opponent. You can also use an N to give your opponent a low hand size, then Ghetsis to make it even lower. Here's the list for the deck. The Magnezone line is as thin as it gets, only a 1-1 line. It isn't totally necessary for early setup, and distracts from getting out your Stoutlands, so a 1-1 line is all I felt was needed. Cornetic from Plasma Freeze is a great starter. It lets you dig through your deck really quickly. It isn't too far off from being its own little tropical beach. Nah, not really. Rock Guard is my choice of Ace Bag. Since you're going to be able to get your opponent's Tool Scrappers and catchers away, Rock Guard becomes pretty darn good. As for how the deck works, it isn't exactly fast, and it's not very easy to set up multiple Stage 2 attackers. If your opponent can take down your first Stoutland, they can usually sweep through the rest without having to use a supporter, just because Stoutland's attack is so terrible and takes so much energy that it's hard to string multiple of them together. And you have to keep them active, or your opponent will use a supporter and easily be able to destroy you. With the realization that Stoutland takes too much energy, I tried a interesting approach. This time, I'm using Celebi EX. That pickup attack Lillipup has sure could be interesting without your opponent being able to play supporters, so yeah, here's the list for it. I added Mr. Mime because, well, Mr. Mime is good. With Lillipup and Celebi EX, you can spam Enhanced Hammers against Plasma. Without supporters, they can't use them to get more energy, so they might get stuck for a while. So, let's just cut to the chase. This deck is not very good. It's too easy to stomp this deck before it gets set up, and usually, hammers aren't enough to stop Plasma. I had a few other ideas for Stoutland, but I never got around to testing them. The first is Exeggutor. Its purpose is to use Blockade and stop your opponent from using supporters, while you set up your Stoutlands. The last idea is one I got from good old Kuka. In his Stoutland deck, he uses Plasma Badge and Colorless Machine to accelerate energy to Stoutland. It may just be his superior deck building, but his seems to work a lot better than any of my Stoutland decks.
And there you have it. Stoutland Ghetsis kind of a short episode. I apologize for that, especially for the extra week-long late wait. But I just have much to say about it, honestly. And to be completely honest with you guys, I'm not as enthusiastic about this mix-up show as I am before. I mean, I still want to do it. I still like the idea of mix-up, but I'm liking the rogues I do less and less because they're just not as good as, decks I need to test for tournaments and stuff. And if I spend that time playing rogue decks testing for tournaments, I could actually, do well at tournaments and such. But if I'm spending every 2 weeks constantly testing with rogue decks to get you guys the best results, I'm not going to be prepared for the tournaments, which is not good for my Pokemon career. There still definitely will be mix-up episodes on concepts that I, think are actually solid concepts. But if it's just I play like a few games and I realize it's terrible, I may not make a video about it. So mix-up still will definitely exist, but it will be more on less obscure things like Stoutland Ghetsis that are just hopeless pretty much, and on things that actually might be good, tech cards, that kind of thing. So this might be the last mix-up episode of this season because the new season's starting up, and we'll still have Back to Reality and stuff like that. Back to Reality will be more of the metagame decks and stuff. For you guys who don't know about those new metagame decks, and my tournament reports will be Back to Realities. So mix-up will definitely still exist. It will just be less common, and Back to Reality may be more common. And there might be more Pokemon stuff. I mean, less Pokemon stuff overall, which I apologize for. But I just, I need to test for these tournaments. So yeah, and thank you all for watching, and I hope you understand this dilemma that I am in. So I might see you next format. I honestly don't know what decks I want to test out next format, but there are definitely, from what I remember, a lot of cool cards in Megalo Cannon or Plasma Blast. I keep calling it Megalo Cannon. It's Plasma Blast. Plenty of cool cards in Plasma Blast that I will definitely be testing, Rogue and not Rogue. And I'll be in Masters Division, so I'll suck. So I'll have more time to test Rogue decks that are bad because I have no hope anyway. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Later.